Welcome to the Press Box. I'm Ryan Thorburn, joined by Steve Mims, and we're getting ready for March Madness on the men's and women's side this year, it appears. Steve, let's start with the men. The Ducks won the Pac-12 championship back-to-back, outright this time. I guess they shared it with Arizona technically, but as we know, they beat Arizona soundly. So they're the #1 seed going to Vegas. What are kind of your expectations for this tournament? Are they motivated to win it for seeding, or are they satisfied with a great season so far?
I think there's a lot to play for. You know, we've seen in the past where some teams feel like, hey, maybe you don't want to play 3 games in 3 days. It can wear you out for the tournament. Go in there, win the opener, and then if you bow out early, don't worry about it. But I think the difference this year is that with Arizona and UCLA both in the top 10, they're all in the mix right now for that #1, at least the #1 seed out of the Pac-12, which would probably be a #1 or 2 in the West, get you to San Jose. It's just a huge difference, it seems like, when you look at, you could go to New York and run into Villanova, Kansas City, run into Kansas. It seems like there's a real nice advantage being set up for a team that can go to the West. And as close as they are, it just seems like the regular season champion may not be the one that gets that #1 seed. It might be the Pac-12 tournament champion. So I think all 3 of those teams feel like there's still a lot to play for.
I'd be very surprised if Oregon, Arizona, and UCLA weren't all in the semifinals. Who's that 4th team you think that can make a run in this tournament?
You know, it would be interesting on Cal. I think Cal might be the most talented one of it, but they just kind of laid an egg last week on the mountain trip, and you wonder, that can be a tough trip, but at the same time, you wonder if maybe that loss to Oregon a couple weeks ago, which if they'd have beaten the Ducks and they kind of had it, you know, would have kind of put them up pretty solidly in the field. Instead, they lose that one, lose these 2. You wonder if they're fading out or not, but you know, if you got Rabb and Bird and those guys who can get hot for a tournament run, I think that's a team to look for if they're still in it.
I'd love to see Oregon, UCLA Part 3, obviously terrific games during the regular season. Dylan Brooks with the game winner, and he beats out Lonzo Ball for Player of the Year. I thought deserving. Your thoughts, I guess, just on the Ducks postseason awards.
Yeah, I thought Brooks would get it from the coaches. I'm not surprised that kind of the national media's surprised that Lonzo Ball didn't get it because he's got bigger numbers. He's been one of the big stories of college basketball. I just think college coaches, when you're voting, look at kind of who do you want on your team, who's the guy that you think has really helped, you know, the top team the most. And so I wasn't surprised that Brooks got it or that Bell got Defensive Player of the Year. Or I thought Bell could get improved too, but I think Chimezie Metu's numbers rose at a different rate than Jordan's did. And the Pac-12, you know, Dana Altman was saying he thought maybe Peyton Pritchard on the Pac-12 all-freshman team, but when you got Fultz, Markkanen, Leaf, and Ball, there's only one more spot. So I think Oregon got what they deserve.
Yeah, pretty special freshman class in the Pac-12 this year. Obviously, you're headed to Las Vegas for that tournament. I just got back from the women's tournament, which is a week early in Seattle. Oregon was kind of on the bubble a little bit heading in, but they beat Arizona, their first tournament win in 8 years. And then they upset Washington, which is a really good team with Kelsey Plum, and then lose to Stanford. Looks like the Oregon women are going to end a 12-year NCAA tournament drought.
Yeah, it's too bad you got to wait. You know, it's a 10-day wait, which you hate. You know, especially if they'd have lost that Washington game and were really on the bubble, you'd have felt like that's a tough 10 days to watch. You know, you'd say you look like they're in. I can't help but think back to like Oregon State baseball last year and Oregon soccer a couple years ago. These teams that felt like they were in, and then the bracket was a surprise. So I think if you're Oregon, you'd like to kind of get that word knowing that they're in. But if they got in, it seems like a team that's kind of got some momentum going to be able to make a nice run.
Yeah, Kelly Graves' feeling is that they are in because I think their RPI is 34. They have 4 wins over ranked opponents. 9 of their losses are to ranked opponents. That includes 3 to Stanford, 2 to Oregon State, who are, you know, potential #1 seeds, at least #2 seeds probably. So their resume is pretty good, even though they have 13 losses. They're 20-13. Sabrina Ionescu is obviously a special player. Beat Cal with the buzzer beater earlier this year. Beat Washington with a couple free throws late. So they have that look that if they can just get in, they can, you know, match up with just about anybody except UConn.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other scary part of, you know, if they're in, it looks like now they might be on that 8 line, which suddenly means you could get sent to a #1 seed's host. It could be UConn or Notre Dame, one of those schools where all of a sudden, you know, you'd almost rather get the 9 or the 10 seed or something and be able to go somewhere, maybe not one of the top level teams, but yeah, they could end up in stores as an 8 seed or right around there.
All right, well, we'll see what happens and talk to you next week after Selection Sunday and Monday.